Hello and welcome to ACS Golf and this week review with myself, Adam Smith. So there you go. I realised in these videos I never actually put my name in it, so there you go. Now today I'm doing this Vokey versus Vokey. Really excited about this with the idea if the newer wedge is any better than the older wedge. So we've got the 2020 version, the SM8, and then we got the 2014 version, the SM5, with the idea of should you be spending your money on brand new wedges every year, or are the old ones absolutely fine? Do they perform just as good? And therefore, you can save your money for improving your bag elsewhere. Now, these are different lofts. So I've got the sand wedge here, which is 54, 10 bounce, S grind, and this is actually the lob wedge 58, 8 bounce, and M grind. But the idea is still the same. The feel of them, the lurch, the performance, etc., is still the same. Which one will come out on top? Now, before we get further into the video, guys, if you're new to the channel, remember to subscribe if you like this video. Weekly reviews of clubs out on every Sunday. And also, if you come back and you haven't subscribed yet, please do subscribe. If you're already a subscriber, welcome back. Now, as always with these videos, we're going to have a closer look at the clubs. Then we're going to come back here. I'm going to talk through the technology and the differences that's probably happened in these over the couple of years. And then we're going to get down to the course, show you some footage from the course where I tested both these out, and also the range as well on the fuller shots. And then get back here to go through the ACS golf scale and determine a winner with the overall outcome of is it worth it? So there you go. Now let's have a closer look at the clubs. Okay. Okay, there you go. Closer look at the clubs. Now, quite a difference between them actually. That's one thing that Titleist have done over the years is they do change the design of the looks, which I think is obviously something you need to do because at the end of the day, if they both look the same, why would you change? So there you go. Now, let's firstly go into the technology in the SM5. As I mentioned, this is from 2014. The grooves, which were a new feature for the year, were new deeper TX3 grooves, which help keep grass and sand away from impact from the ball to offer added spin. Always want that. A heat treatment process on the face means that the grooves maintain maximum spin for longer. So longevity there, which is perfect. You know, if you're out on the golf course all the time, you're specifically using a wedge, not just for sort of fuller shots in, but also you're chipping, getting out sand, etc., which a lot of people do with a lob wedge, then obviously you want to make sure that those grooves stay sharp and stay as spinny as possible for as long as possible. So nice little feature there. Also something that they changed from the SM4, where the blade length has been shortened and the toe area is rounder than the SM4. Basically, that's from coming from tour players at the time. So basically, that's more aesthetics, but also moving the weight around a little bit to get a bit more of forgiveness, basically, to change that sort of center of gravity. So there you go with the SM5s. Now, moving on to the SM8s. So here you go. Now, what main thing they've done with this is they've done a progressive COG, which is center of gravity, which means as the face, as the lofts go up, the COG moves up the face. And the idea is this, is they put tungsten weights in the toes of each club, and the available hosel settings, there you go, makes ball easier to get into the air while still providing a great feel. Also helps the club square its face at impact. And then obviously we've still got the spin mill grooves, which have been even more refined this year. I mean, that's one thing that wedge companies say every year, don't they? They come out, oh, we've refined it, we refined it, we refined it. How much you can refine it is a bit of a mystery to me, as obviously conformity-wise, the grooves can only be so deep, etc. So a bit weird there. But the idea is they refine the process so you get more spin and more control. Now, what I do like with this is they obviously putting that tungsten weight in there, that does, and moving that center of gravity, it does add that little bit more forgiveness as well, as they've moved it sort of to the toe, away from the heel to just basically give that more forgiveness. So there you go. There's sort of the main sort of technology is in the SM8. Now, one thing that's interesting about the SM8 is the stock shafts on these are actually 130 grams, where they actually put a bit more weight in the shaft and not in the club head to sort of help that, help get the ball in the air, help the sort of feel of the club. But one thing that happened is a lot of people couldn't actually tell necessarily where the club head is. If you've got a lot of weight in the shaft, sometimes you can lose that club head, especially when you're swinging. And a lot of people, such as myself, I like to know where the club head is. I like to know where it is on impact. So that's one thing that actually changed in the SM9 to the model going up. They changed where they moved more of the weight to the head and out of the shaft, so you could feel that club head coming down a little bit more for better control. Now, as you can tell from there you go between the SM5 and the SM8 there, and then the SM9 that I've just said, there's little tweaks. There's nothing groundbreaking between them. There's little tweaks that happen every single year. Well, obviously they say this is the best we've ever produced because it's that little tweaks. And when it comes down to Vokeys, Tyler's Vokeys are one of the most, I'd say, sought after wedges out there. Really they're considered the number one wedge, definitely on tour anyways. A lot of players use them, but does that mean that we should be putting them in the bag when compared to the TaylorMade MG2s I had in the bag, the Nim wedges from Cobra that I reviewed a couple of weeks ago, which were very good? And so it makes it interesting. Are we a bit blinded by the fact that everyone says they're so good that we will pick them up, brand new every year, thinking, oh, this is going to be even better, this is going to be even better. So it's definitely food for thought there with the idea, well, don't get me wrong, we'll go into the ACS golf scale, but straight off the bat, these are very good wedges because Titleist and Vokey are very good at doing what they do. So these are, in my mind, and will always be one of the best wedges out there. But it's just a question of, do we need to be buying a new one every year, as I mentioned before? So yeah, so there you go. There's the technology. Now let's get down to the course, as I'll discuss sort of how I felt with them, the feel of them, etc., out on the course and obviously at the range as well. And then we'll get to the ACS golf scale and then come to that big conclusion. There you go. Is it worth it? And to be honest, a bit of a twist at the end, which you'll find out. So there you go. Okay, let's get down to the course then. So here I am down at Hersham on a very wet and a bit of windy day, to be honest. One thing I will say with wedges is, for me to really test them, you need to get them out of golf course. I did take them to the range as well, to test the numbers, but I mean, really to get a feel of them, you need to take them on the golf course because you need to practice your chips, your full shots, getting out the bunkers, etc. I mean, the range is great, but it's very limited when it comes down to your wedge play, which is really sort of concentrated around the greens. So that's why I made sure that I had both these clubs out with me on the day. Now, when I was actually driving range on a full sort of hit, the SM8, so the sand wedge at 54 degrees was doing what I wanted, about 85 to 90 yards, perfect. And then the lob wedge, so 58 degrees, the SM5 was about 75, 70 yards, again perfect, exactly what I wanted, and very consistent both of them, which is very good. Now around the course, one thing I will say about these is I currently use the MG2 TaylorMade. They're a little bit softer. Now, not saying that the Titleist here Vokeys aren't a good feel, because they really are, but they're just that little bit more firmer. So for someone who wants a sort of firmer club, this is perfect. Also, you can't really see this, but this was actually a great out from the sand here on a long par 3 in. Left me with a nice putt to get past, so I was very happy with that. But the feel of them was firm, but still very nice. I knew if I hit them in the middle of the club, I knew if I was missing the middle of the face, especially when it came down to the chipping side of it. So it meant that I was quite accurate around the green, which is really important for me. And I had that confidence on the full shots that I was going to get it the distance. There you go, at the course and at the range. Now, one thing before I go into the ACS golf scale that I actually forgot to mention in the technology side of it, and one thing that Vokeys have done, which is sort of, I think, have improved them over the years, and that's increased basically the grind types that they have. So currently at the moment, they've got 6 different grind types. They got the F grind. So basically this is to do with the sole of the club, if you don't know what that is, and basically with turf interaction, depending on your type of swing. Basically depends on what sort of grind you should have. So you've got the F grind, which is the all-purpose grind. M grind for players with a shallower swing. I believe that's what this is. The S grind for players who golf on firm courses and control the loft with their hands, which is this one, which is probably great for the summer actually, to be fair. A D grind, ideal for players with a steep attack angle at the golf ball. K grind, most used for sand wedge, not in this case. L grind, favourite grind for players with confidence around the green. So there's a lot of different grind options there, and that's one thing that they definitely have improved over the years, is the amount of grind options out there to suit all different type of players. And to be honest, that actually helps with forgiveness a little bit more, because if you get the right grind, you know, it's going to help you with the turf interaction and therefore help you get the ball in the air, get those chips working well. So that is one thing that they have progressed with over the years, and I think it's a very good thing. So even though maybe the clubs themselves haven't progressed that drastically with the grind, you might find that a new one is better than you for an older one, because you can't get that grind in the older model. So there you go. Just thought I'd add that in, because I think that's a very important part when it comes down to these clubs and Titleist Vokeys. Now, we can get rid of that, and go into the ACS golf scale. So as always, we've got distance, feel, looks, price, and forgiveness, 1 to 5, 5 being the best, 1 being the worst. So let's go for, which one should we go for first? Let's go for the SM5 first. I picked up the SM8. That's not the one. So the SM5 first. So there you go. Now, distance, I never do distance. I always think it's not important when it comes down to wedge, because you can just change the loft, change the size, etc. It's not about, you know, oh, my wedge goes 200 yards and your wedge goes 100. You know, that's very much down to the person. So distance, I just tend to ignore. What I will say is, obviously, I do still test it, and I mentioned it obviously on the video there with distances. At the range, very much did what exactly I expected to do. So not giving a rating, even though I'm on my MG2 when I first did it, but not giving it a rating because for me, it's not important, it's relevant. So there you go. Now on to let's go on to looks first. So looks, I give it a 3 out of 5. The reason is they have changed the looks over the years, so it does look more of an older club, and that's my only question with it, is when it goes in the bag, you know, it doesn't pop like the newer one. So 3 out of 5. I still think it's a very classic, good looking club, especially with the round features of the wedge itself. You look down, it does inspire confidence. So 3 out of 5, I'll give that. Forgiveness, 3.5 out of 5. It's not bad for a wedge. Obviously, it's not like your big wedges where you get your, your big old, what are they called? Cleveland CBXs, there you go. Your big chunky wedges, but really good. I'm happy with that. 3.5 out of 5. I think for what they look like compared to other sort of more tour spec wedges, I think they do have that little bit more forgiveness in there, because unlike your Cleveland that have the CBXs, unlike your TaylorMade that have the high toe, unlike your Callaways that have the, I forgot what the Callaway is. I think it's a Mac Daddy. Can't remember the Callaway, so ignore the Callaway one. But they all have that sort of more forgiving version for the sort of the higher handicap. Well, Vokey sort of have this across the board. So there you go, because the idea is for all players. So 3.5 out of 5 for forgiveness. Very happy with that. Going on to feel, I've given it a 3.5 out of 5. I think the feel was good. I could tell where my mishits were. A little bit too firm for me when it comes down to wedges. My TaylorMade MG2s are quite soft compared to that, and I actually prefer the softer feel. Just gives me that little bit more control for me. With a firmer club, I can tend to overhit these things. So there you go for that. 3.5 out of 5. Still very good. If you like the sort of firmer feel, then something to look at, definitely. And then finally into price. Now, this is where it gets a little bit weird, and I'll leave price at the end, and we'll go through both the clubs together for price, because it's a bit weird. And this is where you sort of maybe do have the issue with the Vokey name. Now, okay, going into the SM8, so the newer card from 2020, and I would say I think it performed a little bit better than the SM5, in my opinion, anyway. So when it came down to the feel, I actually gave this a 4 out of 5. I think having that tungsten there and that sort of centre of gravity movement, I just felt I could feel it a little bit better. As I mentioned with the shaft, I did feel I couldn't really find where the club head was, which was a bit annoying, but I felt it did feel that a little bit nice, especially out of the middle on some of the chips. But again, I will say with this though, is it still feels quite firm. It feels firmer than I would sort of hope. I, even though it's 4 out of 5, so it gave it a really good score. For me, I just prefer something softer. So that's why I haven't got rid, it's not being reflected in the score, the firmness, because I know some people go out and they'll prefer that. But for me, it still felt like a little bit more too firm, too firm for me than I would hope for. So not really for me, but still 4 out of 5 because I think generally anyone who prefers that firmer feel, I think you really will like it. So on to forgiveness. Now I've actually given this 4 out of 5. So I think there is more forgiveness in it than the older one, the SM5, because of that tungsten movement. And so I'd say it's quite a forgiving wedge. So if you're looking for that more forgiveness wedge, but in, still a very much a player's style, then I would definitely go with the SM8 over the SM5. But believe me, even though 3.5 to 4, this possibly on another day could have gone 3.5. I really don't think there's much difference in it, even though the scores are different. So don't be too alarmed if you got the SM5, to be honest. Moving on to looks, I've actually given this a 4. I personally, the looks wise from the club itself, it's a little bit more sort of maybe chunky on the top there. It's a little less rounded, which I prefer. But I just generally just like this. It's a bit more of a modern look with the BV Vokey and the Vokey design. I quite like that sort of input in there as well. So I think personally for me, looks wise, this is a better looking club. So giving it 4 out of 5. Now on to price, which is a bit of a weird one. So I've given both of these 3 out of 5. I have, because I think on the second-hand market, I think they're very much where you'd expect any sort of decent wedge to be. So your big boys, your Vokeys, your Clevelands, etc. This is very much in that sort of ballpark. Now, the question, the thing that's really sort of got me is in the second-hand markets. So your golf bidders over here in the UK, your golf clubs for cash, possibly PGA stores in America, etc. There is a difference in price. So golf bidder had this at £77, which is just under $100, while golf clubs for cash had this one for £55, which is just under $70. So, we're talking £20 there. So, a little bit of a jump, to be fair, but for maybe 6 years, there's not a huge amount of jump, is there? And this is the thing you're going to find if you go into a golf shop and it's a premium wedge, even though your age, you're going to find it difficult to find it under £50, under sort of $65. You might get lucky, but it could be in an absolute state. And that's because wedges haven't changed that much, and they know that. So they know if it's if this was in brand new condition, they'd be selling it for, let's say, one that's, say, this club in good condition, the same price. So because wedges, they know it hasn't changed. It's all about feel. It's all about what you like and what sort of wedge you get on with. If you find a wedge you get on with, keep it in the bag. I mean, at the moment, even though I love my MG2s, for example, my TaylorMade, I actually have a Titleist T200 gap wedge in there. So I did have the TaylorMade one in there, the MG2, but for some reason my chipping around the green with that gap wedge, the Titleist T200, just works. And so it's in the bag over my MG2 gap wedge. So it definitely just comes down to what you prefer and what you want to go for. So do be aware of that when it comes down to buying any wedges. You don't necessarily have to go for the big names. And so, so in the shop, sorry, we went down a bit of a rabbit hole there. So in the shop, that's what we've got. Second hand, this is where you can get a little bit funny. So on such places like eBay, etc. So the SM8, I've seen it go for £50, which is around $63. I've seen one go for £30 in good condition, $38, and I've seen ones go up for £75. Again, $93. So a big range there. It really does depend on the time and place and how they've done, and obviously condition as well. You know, if it's in bad condition, it'll be cheaper. If it's in good condition, you're probably going to be competing against a lot of people to get this. While the SM5 on eBay, £37, would expect that, you know, under $50. You know, £41 would expect that, under £50. But then you're getting a few going for like £65, which is $81, and that sort of be what I'd be expecting this on eBay. And then another one, £40, so $50. So I think if you're looking at one of these and it's in good condition and it's around that £65 mark or that sort of, you know, $80 mark or plus, I'd look at a newer version, because I feel like you could get a newer one for the same price. You know, if you're looking for under £50, the majority of the time you're going to get this one. So have a look for this. So there you go for prices. So I give them both 3 out of 5. They are what they are. Over here in the UK at the moment, you can still get an SM8 brand new if you want it for £119. So it's around under $150. So that might be an option if you're looking for new wedges. Save yourself a bit of money. Don't go for the brand new one. Get this. Still get it brand new, but for a lot cheaper. And one thing I will say as well, if you really, really want to up your wedge game, do possibly have a fitting. There's so many grinds out there now that you can really find, especially with Titleist, you can really find the right one for you before you even start looking into bounce. So do make sure, if you really want to and you want to go and spend the money, go and get yourself fitted, because then you'll have, your wedges for the next couple of years, and you'll know exactly what to look for in the next couple of years. So always an option out there. People think getting tested for irons, driver, they don't necessarily think of wedges. So do think, if you're really looking to up your game possibly, and you want a set of wedges that you can have for years to come, maybe go and get fitted for them. Spend that 50 quid over here in the UK and go and get a wedge fitted. So there you go. Now, so you got the ACS golf scale there. And obviously, if you look at the ACS golf scale, the SM8 takes it. It definitely does. A lot of sort of 4s to sort of 3.5s of this one. But logically, I really had to think about that for the ACS golf scale. And logically, can I really see much of a difference from this? I mean, they're both in relatively good condition, so I found that they were stopping on the green well enough for me. I was definitely getting good spin from both of them. I mean, my sort of attack of angle and the way I do it, I tend, every now and again, I get a bit of backspin, but tend not to really all the time. But I was still finding good stopping power with both of these. And if you gave me both of these in my hand and said, these are your wedges, I'd be happy with both. I really don't think there's much of a difference in there, to be honest. I don't think there's been a huge amount of jump in technology over the years. The only thing, personally, from testing wedges that I think I would go, yes, I definitely want that over this wedge in my bag, it's just the full face grooves, actually. Especially if you're trying a flop shot or something like that, having the full face grooves could really help, especially if you're hitting it off the toe. And that's the only thing. Wedge wise, I don't think there hasn't been enough difference in my mind to say, if you've got a set of wedges in your bag, to go, all right, you go out there and you buy a brand new set for £200 or whatever it is nowadays. I don't think it's worth it. I go to if you're really worn, I go to the second market and try and get the same pair. You use them, you know what they like. Just try and use the same. Just keep that consistency with your wedges and try and keep it the same, personally. So there you go. Titleist versus Titleist. We technically do have a winner, but honestly, unless you're, low handicapper, scratch golfer, even mid handicapper, possibly, you might notice a slight difference. The majority of you out there, I really don't think you're going to tell between these two. Okay, so believe me, save yourself some money, really, and get a good condition one of them. That's what I would do. So there you go. Hope you enjoyed this video. Remember to give it a like. Obviously, comment down below as well. If you've just had some old wedges that you've had for years and you've just purchased some new ones, have you noticed a massive difference, or are you just, got a nice new shiny wedge in the bag and play exactly the same? So do let me know in the comments down below. And remember also, as I mentioned before, do subscribe to the channel. Okay, guys, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you next week. See you then. Bye-bye.